Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to be able to submit for the record a letter from the Waters Advocacy Coalition. It is signed by 39 different organizations, among those the American Farm Bureau, the American Gas Association, Foundation for Environmental and Economic Progress, National Association of Home Builders, National Pork Producers Council, many others. The basic content of the letter is objecting to the insufficient analysis offered by the EPA on the impacts that this rule will have.
Without objection, submitted.
Thank you. Mr. Perciasepe, I'm sorry. Okay, Bob. As the letter that I'm just referencing from the Waters Advocacy Coalition is noting, the agency certified the Waters of the United States rule as one that will not have significant economic impact on a substantial number of small entities. Yet the agency did not provide any factual basis for that certification as required under the RFAs. Did the EPA simply fail to do this because a factual basis didn't actually exist?
We provided an analysis to make the determination that the rule itself, looking at direct impacts, which is what we are required to do under the RFA, would not have a significant impact on a substantial number of small entities.
What do you qualify as a substantial number?
Well, it's more the direct impact than the number.
So we don't even know what the number is when we're talking about who's going to be impacted?
Well, we are not expanding the jurisdiction of the Clean Water Act. So any small entity that is currently covered by the Clean Water Act will continue to be covered by the Clean Water Act.
Well,
we're not making more of them covered.
Actually, you're saying not making more covered, but in your testimony you stated that people wanted to be clear whether they're in or out of jurisdiction, but under the determinations that are making, you clearly can expand jurisdiction.
But that's not what we're proposing. We're proposing to not add any new waters to these to what is covered and jurisdictional. We're trying to exclude certain things.
Is there a connectivity between all waters?
There is, but they're not all significant.
Doesn't that give you complete control?
They're not all significant, and we make it clear in the rule that they're not all significant.
Yeah, what's significant?
We've defined some hydrologic characteristics that would make a water significant.
What are they?
That in the science of hydrology, if you look at a flowing area, whether it's flowing all the time.
Flowing year-round?
No, I said whether it's flowing intermittently.
What's intermittently?
Not all year round.
Not all year round, so it could be 10 minutes?
Well, it could be enough that water flows there frequently enough.
What's frequently?
All right, you're not going to let me answer?
No, I'm just trying to get down to the actual definition because of the arbitrary nature of this rule.
It is not arbitrary, sir. And if you let me answer, I can give you some clarity. In the science of hydrology, you can look at a flowing, a depressed area where water would flow, whether it flows full-time or part-time. Let's just use those plain English words. It will exhibit characteristics on the ground. There'll be a bed, there'll be banks, there'll be an ordinary high water mark. These are things identifiable to hydrologists. And if you don't have those characteristics, then there's not enough frequency of flow or volume of flow that would make it jurisdictional under the Clean Water Act. That is what we propose. That is limiting to anything that might have an impact downstream to interstate commerce.
What you've just described to me, I live in southwestern United States in Colorado. Mm-hmm. We get one rainstorm. And with the lay of our land, you can have a high water mark caused by a 10-minute flow that then disappears. So under what you're describing to me, a 10-minute flow that happens once a year then becomes abnormal.
An ordinary high water mark is not something from being wet 10 minutes ago. It's something that can be seen on the rock in terms of debris or discoloration of the rock.
Cut in the bank or a cut in the bank of dirt?
Erosional features are not covered.
Erosional features.
We just excluded those.
I'd like to be able to move on just a little bit here, move in a little different direction. If you put out a rule under EPA, do you expect it to be followed?
Well, yes.
You do. Should you comply with the RFA and with NEPA?
Yes, we do.
You do? So is it appropriate right now under Section 104 of the existing Clean Water Act that both retroactively and preemptively you're shutting down projects before determinations have been made under NEPA and the RFA?
I can't answer that question because I'm not sure what you're...
Are you preemptively shutting down projects right now based off of the proposed rules, saying that you cannot proceed?
We have not done that.
What about, I'm sorry?
They haven't issued the rule.
But we've got a proposed rule.
Right, but we have existing regulations that are more expansive than the proposed rule.
Okay. You know, up in Alaska, I just read, is it the Pebble Mine? Is that right?
Oh.
Pebble Mine?
In Bristol Bay.
Crystal Bay. Have you shut that down before the analysis has been done?
Our regional administrator made a finding that is out for public comment.
Does that comply with NEPA?
There's been no action taken on that.
No action, so it's not allowed to move forward until the action takes place?
They can do whatever they want while that action is under consideration. And that action is to look at an area of water that we would not want to see discharge into.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I don't know if we're going to have a second round. I'm way over time, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to associate myself with many of the questions and comments of Mr. Lochtmeyer, because one issue, and Deputy Administrator, does it disturb you a little bit when you were just talking about, and that's admirable that they were able to achieve this, but some of the small car companies wanting to be able to sell their does it disturb you when we talk about the sense of Congress, which created the EPA, by the way, had rejected cap and trade? And effectively now we're seeing it moving forward in a regulatory action.
Sorry, I missed.
I was just quoting you. You were just saying that they wanted to be able to use their credits in regards to
this is just between the car. We always do this in our rules.
Yeah.
In all of our automobile rules, if one automobile manufacturer does a better job of pollution control than others, they can move those credits around between the automobiles, but they can't sell it to a power plant or vice versa. It's inside. Market mechanisms has been something EPA has used in rulemaking going back to the early 1980s.
Yes, sir, and I understand that, but I guess my point is Congress had rejected under a Democrat administration cap and trade, and
this is not a cap and trade program. This is the ability to trade credits in between. Again, we've been doing it since the 80s.
And I think that's really part of the concern. Is we see stepping stones to movement. If we go back to water, when Secretary Salazar, Secretary of Interior, was initiating, were you familiar with the Blue Ways program?
No, sir.
Blue Ways was coming out of the Department of Interior, which is effectively a precursor to the waters of the U.S. And I'd invite you or your successor to make sure that they read the reports that were coming out of the Blue Ways program, effectively citing pollutants coming from faraway farmlands in the Midwest. And it effectively really goes to Mr. Schweikert's point in terms of once water is put on, the picture that Mr. Hulskamp had shown you, we may not define that as navigable, but as it flows down, effectively that backflow becomes all navigable waters. And that's really the concern that people have is once you start regulating, it does have impacts and those costs that are going to be associated with it. Through this committee, we actually have the empirical evidence that through regulatory costs in this country right now, Americans are paying $1.8 trillion in regulatory costs. And no one is suggesting we get rid of all regulations. But those are real costs. And right now in Colorado, yesterday, you held EPA hearings, and unfortunately you held them in Denver. We sent 2 letters to the Director requesting that the hearing actually be held in the impacted area over in Craig, Colorado, Moffett County in my district. We received no response from the EPA. Would it be appropriate when we're holding these hearings, and I think you've heard loud and clear the importance of these RFAs, to actually go to the impacted communities rather than just going to urban areas for hearings?
Well, the hearings are just one aspect of our outreach, and we've tried to distribute them around the country into different different parts of the country so people have an opportunity. But let me just say this categorically: EPA will meet with anybody who wants to meet with us on this, and we are going to reach out to virtually every state and the constituencies in each one of those states, and we're in the process of doing that.
Great. Can we get a hold of you, and you will help facilitate with us for Director Jackson to be able to come to Craig, Colorado, and we will meet with them?
Well, you tell me who it is that we're meeting. I'll try to figure out.
We're going to be able to meet with community members, with county commissioners, state legislators, the impacted private entities in rural Colorado that are going to be impacted by proposed EPA rules.
So we would want to work with the state of Colorado because they're the ones that are going to have to implement it.
And you will be willing to come to Colorado?
I'm willing to get on the phone and get with the governor and try to figure out how we do that.
Great. We'd love to be able to have you come in. And I think when we're talking a little bit about
how to have a meeting here. I don't know where the meeting will be, but we'll have a meeting.
Okay. And I think that is part of the problem. We just had rural Coloradoans had to drive 4.5, 6 hours to be able to go to the meeting in Denver, Colorado. It is important that when we're talking about outreach, I think not to discard rural America. Because these are some of where the real impacts. And when we're talking about the states are going to have to implement it, do you share with me some of the concern when we're looking about some of the carbon credits? If you want to be able to see blue skies and a coal-fired power plant, come to Craig, Colorado with me. We'll be able to see that. But the concern that we are hearing, and these are out of senior citizens that are on fixed incomes, young families that are just trying to be able to get started, they're seeing taxation via regulation to where those utility bills continue to climb. Is this taken into consideration at all by the EPA?
Our economic analysis shows that energy bills will decline.
When?
Between now and 2030, the energy bills will.
If I'm paying $100, it's actually going to go down?
Our national estimate, remember we're doing national estimate, is that energy bills will decline 8 to 9%.
And I'd love to see that study.
That's in our regulatory impact analysis.
We'll certainly have
and
to
we can point that out if the committee would need to have that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Collins.